Hey everyone, welcome to the fourth part in this series where we're building a personal dashboard app using Angular. In this video we're going to start working on building the user interface for the Todos view. Alright then, so let's get started. Let's go back to the code here. Alright, so I'm going to close this. Okay, and let's now go to the Todos component. Let's go to the template and let's get rid of this and let's create a div which has the class of Todos wrapper. Okay, so let's save this and let's now go to the style sheet and let's style the Todos wrapper. And let's just give this a background color of wheat. Save that and let's go back to the application. And we can't see anything. That's because we have to put height 100% here as well. So height 100%, save that, go back here, and now we see this. Cool. Alright, so this is the bookmarks and this is the Todos view. Okay, so if we go here, then we can get rid of this and instead put overflow y auto. Okay, so that any overflow will be scrollable. And that's the same thing that we did in the bookmarks style sheet. Right, so this is the same thing. Okay, so let's go back to the todos.component.scss and let's save this. And okay, cool. So now let's go and actually work on the to-do items. Alright, so here we have the UI design for the Todos view. So here are the to-do items. So here we have a block here which has a checkbox, which is this thing here, and the text of the to-do, right? And this checkbox here, on hover it will go all grey, right? So now it's hollowed out. It only has a border, but on hover it will go all grey, and then on completed it will then go green, right? And it'll have a check mark icon, right? So that's what we're going to build. So let's go back to the code here and let's go here and let's go and create a div which has the class of to-do item, and later on we'll actually make it into its own component, but for now we can actually just do the markup here. So to-do item, and then inside here we want a checkbox, right? So check dash box, and inside there we want to actually put the check mark icon. So let's do i.material icons, and then check is the name of the icon. We can save that now and go back to the application, and if we look here we can actually see that. And the reason we're seeing check here is because actually we're using material icons outlined, aren't we? Outlined. So if I save that and go back to the application, now we can see this check mark. Okay, cool. So we should actually probably first set up the main layout of the application so that we have the container like we did here, right? So let's go and do that. Let's make sure that this is in the middle here. So I guess we can go here and we can create a div which has the class of container, and we can now move this div all the way down here. Okay, so let's save that. Let's go back to the application, and now we see that the container is working because we can see the check mark here now, right? So that's the edge of the container right there. Alright, so if we go here and we now continue to work on the to-do item, the other thing in terms of markup it needs is the text of the to-do, right? So here we can actually now do a paragraph tag which has the class of to-do text, like that. And then here we can now do this is the to-do text. Save that and let's go back to the application, and now we see it showing up here. Cool. Alright, so now we actually have to go and style this so that it looks more like what we have here. So let's go to the style sheet for the to-dos component, and let's go here and let's style the to-do item. Alright, so first of all we want to actually make it so that they're both on the same line, right? Because now it's just one after the other. Okay, so let's go back to the style sheet and we can do display flex and go back to the application, and now it's like that. Cool. Alright, so let's now go back here. Let's give this a background color of RGBA black 0.4. Save that and let's go back to the application. Okay, cool. Let's also do a bit of a border radius. So let's do border dash radius, and let's try 25 pixels. Let's save that. Okay, cool. All right, so that looks good. The reason that I did 25 pixels is I just picked this number because I thought it would be large enough so that it's over half of the overall height, as I want these to be completely rounded, right? So I just wanted to pick a large number to completely round these off, because this will work even with a super high number like 100 pixels, then this will still work, right? It will still actually make sure that these are completely rounded. But I don't want to have a super high value, because then if there is multiple lines of the to-do, then it will look a bit weird, right? So for example, if I go here and I'm just going to copy this and paste it, so we have two of these items, and then here I can go and put in some lorem ipsum text, and this should create multiple lines because it's quite long. So if we save that and go back to the application, we now see that we have the second one here, which spans over 3 lines, right? And here we see that it's completely rounded these edges, right? And we don't actually want that on the multi-line to-dos because it looks a little bit weird, right? So what we want is we actually want this to be as small as possible to make this single line to-dos completely rounded. But what we want to do is we want to choose the smallest possible number to make the single line to-do items completely rounded. Okay, so I think 25 pixels should be okay. Cool, alright, so let's go back to the application. And, okay, and that looks a lot better because it's not completely rounded on the multi-line item, right? Cool, alright, so now let's actually go and put some margin in between each of these items. Okay, so alright, so let's go back to the code, and let's go here, and let's add some margin bottom, and let's set this to 15 pixels. Okay. Alright, let's save that, let's go back to the application. Cool, alright, so now there's space in between those two. Cool. Let's now go and set the color of the text. Okay, so let's go back to the code, and let's go and style to-do item text, and let's set the color here to RGBA white 0.92, and let's save that, and let's go back to the application. Okay, that's not what I called it. What did I call it? To-do text. Okay, yeah, let's call it to-do text. Alright, so let's go here and let's get rid of that to-do text, save that, let's go back to the application, and there we go. Okay. Cool, so that looks okay. Alright, so let's now go and put some padding on here. So let's go and put some padding here. Alright, so here we can put 10 pixels. Save that, and let's go back to the application. Okay, and let's actually add some more padding to the left and right. Let's go and add a little bit more padding. So 12 pixels on the left and the right, and 10 pixels on the top and the bottom. So if we save that and go back to the application. Okay, cool. Alright, so the next thing we can do is we can actually center these, right? So let's make sure it's all centered. So if I go here, and if we can now go here and do align items, center. Okay, save that, go back to the application, and now they're centered, right? This is centered like that. Alright, so the next thing we can do is we can go and style the checkbox. But before we do that, let's actually go and make this a little bit darker, this background color. So let's go here and let's just make this 0.5. Okay, let's save that. Let's go back to the application. Alright, cool. Okay, so now let's go and style the checkbox. So let's go back to the style sheet and let's go here and let's style the checkbox. And here we can set this to have 4 pixels of padding. 4 pixels. And let's set the border that we see in the design here, right? Let's set this border. So let's set this to 4 pixels solid. RGBA white 0.35. Let's save that and let's go back to the application. Okay, so now let's go and make sure that this is completely round. So let's set the border radius to 50%, border radius 50%, like that. Save that and let's go back to the application. Okay, cool. So first of all, it's a bit too thick. So let's go and change this to 2 pixels. Save that and go back to the application. Okay, let's now go and add some space in between the text and the checkbox. So let's go here and let's set some margin right. Margin right, 15 pixels. Let's save that and go back to the application. Alright, cool. So the next thing we can do is we can actually make sure that these are completely round. So these aren't actually completely round, and if we go and inspect element, we can see why. So let me actually make this a separate window. Alright, so if we inspect this checkbox, alright, so this checkbox should be the height and width based on its contents, which is this icon, and its padding, right? So if we look here, we want the checkbox to have the same height and width so that it makes a circle, right? But currently it's 36 by 40, so it's slightly higher. It's 4 pixels more in height than it is in width. So the reason for that is actually because of this icon having a line height, right? And it doesn't really work with the normal display block, right? And we can see that because it's 24 by 24, so it should create a scenario where the checkbox has the same height and width because the material icon has the same height and width, right? So this should be the same height and width, but it's due to the line height of this, right? So here we can fix this by changing this from display block, which is the default. If we look here, it has the default display block, and we can change this to display flex, okay? And that's actually fixed the issue. On this one, that one still looks the same, but this one has been fixed because we've put some element styles on this element that says display flex, right? So if we check, so then if we uncheck this, we can see it there, and if we check it back again, then it's fixed, okay? So we can now go and fix this by going to the code, going to the style sheet, and making sure that this is a display flex, okay? Save this, and let's go back to the application, and that's now been fixed. Cool, so let's now go back here, and let's hide the icon, because here we can see the icon, right? And we only want to see the icon in the completed state. So if we go to the style sheet here, we can actually nest some styles for the I tag, and here we can do font size is 18 pixels to make it smaller, first of all, and we can set the opacity to 0, okay? So if we save that and go back to the application, we see that two things have happened. It's actually gone smaller, this checkbox, and that's because we changed the font size of the icon from the default, which is 24 pixels, to 18 pixels, so it's smaller, and now we can't see it because of the opacity, right? It's now set to 0. And if we actually go back here and we just comment this out and save it and go back to the application, we can now see that it is smaller, right? So that's because we changed the font size. All right, so let's set the opacity to 0. Okay, save that, and let's go back to the application. Cool. All right, so now let's go and work on the hover styles. So if we go back to our code here, and first of all, we can make this look clickable, right? Because currently these don't look clickable. So if we go back to the code here and go to the to do item class, we can set cursor to pointer like that. Okay, let's save that and let's go back to the application, and now these look clickable like that, right? Okay, so now we actually have to add some hover styles. So if we go back here, we can actually go and style to do dash item hover. And first of all, we can change the color of the text, right? So it is this by default, and we can change it to white. So if we do here, if we now do dot to do text, we can set the color to white like that. And if we now do dot checkbox, we can now do well, first of all, let's actually just see how this looks. So let's not do this for now. Let's save that like that, and we can go back to the application and see if this works. Yep, cool. So it's very subtle, but it is changing a bit. Okay, so let's actually go back and let's actually change the default to do text color to 0.9. Save that. Let's go back to the application. Cool. All right, so that looks a little bit better. Let's now go and work on the checkbox styles on hover, right? So on to do item hover, we want to nest the styles for the checkbox, and that's because we could actually do on checkbox hover like this. So we could go here and do dot checkbox hover, and inside here we could just change the border color to transparent and change the background color to the same color that the border was. So here we could do RGBA white 0.35, okay, like we did up here. The reason that I'm changing this is because we want it to be a solid color, right? But as we're using RGBA, the two RGBA colors would stack on top of each other, and you'd still be able to see the border color. So that's why I'm doing that. So let's save that and let's go back to the application and let's hover over these checkboxes. And there we go. Cool. So that is what we want. Cool. And if I went here and I just commented out this and saved it, then we can see how it would look. Okay, so here we see that we can still see the border color. That's because it's actually stacking on top of each other. Okay, so let's go back to the code and let's just set this to transparent. Okay, save that and go back to the application. Okay, so now we can actually see that these are being filled in when we hover over the checkbox. However, we want this to happen even when we hover over any other part of the to-do item, right? As this whole to-do item should be clickable to complete the to-do, right? So if we go back to the style sheet, we can actually move all of these styles. So let's just cut these styles and we can nest them inside here. Okay, so if we save that now and go back to the application, we'll see that these still don't work, and that's because we actually have to remove the hover state from here, right? So if we remove that, so now it's saying on to-do item hover, then change the checkbox styles to this, right? So let's save that and let's go back to the application and let's go here. And now it works. Okay, cool. Cool, all right, so these now work. So let's go back to the code and let's now work on the completed state. So here is the completed state. That's how it would look, right? So we have to make this a green background and show the icon. All right, so let's go and do that. Let's go to the template and let's create a new to-do item, which is in the completed state. So let's actually not create a new to-do item. Let's just go here and let's just add a class to this to-do item called completed. Okay, so let's save that and let's go back to the application. All right, so there's no change, and that's because we haven't styled completed yet. But this is the one that has completed class. So if we look here, this has the completed class. All right, so this should be the one that looks like this. Okay, so let's go back to the code. Okay, and let's go to the style sheet and let's go and style the to-do item in its completed state. So dot to-do item dot completed. Okay, so this will style the element which has the class of to-do item and completed. All right, so inside here, what we can do is we can change the color of the to-do text. First of all, we actually want to see here that it changes to a kind of lighter gray, right? It isn't gray. It's just a white with RGBA with a lower alpha value, right? And the reason for that is because I wanted to make it look like it was less important because it's been completed, so it takes up less attention, right? So it's a kind of it's a white with a lower alpha value. Okay, so let's first change the color of that. So dot to do dash text, and here let's change the color to RGBA white 0.5. Okay, let's save that and let's go back to the application. And now here we see that this has a much lighter alpha value. Okay, so that's good. Let's now go and change this to about 0.78 because I think that's a little bit too much. So let's save that and let's go back to the application, and that's much better. Okay, cool. All right, so now let's go and style the checkbox in its completed state, because this should now look like this. Okay, so let's go back to the code and let's now go and style the checkbox class. And first of all, let's set the background to RGB 9218 and 89. Okay, that is the RGB code of the green that I'm using here. Alright, so let's save that and let's go back to the application. Cool, and now we have that green color. And one thing to notice is that it's kind of hard to see, but we can still see the border color, and that's because it has the RGBA value. So the border is actually showing up as a lighter shade of green, right? So let me see if I can make this a little bit clearer. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see that there's a difference when you hover over it. And that's because on hover, we are setting the border color to transparent, right? So that's with no border color, or a transparent border color, and that is with the RGBA white value on the border, right? Like that one that we have here. So, okay. So, alright, so let's go back to the code, and let's actually just set the border color to transparent. And now that's fixed. Cool. Alright, so now what we can do is we can actually go and show the icon. So let's go here, and let's go and style the icon. And here we can now do opacity 1. Okay, save that, and let's go back to the application. And there we go, so now it's actually showing. Cool. Alright, so now that's actually pretty much done. That is now the completed state of the to-do. Alright, okay, so the next thing we can do is we can actually add a transition to this so that this kind of transitions in nicely. So let's go back to the code, and let's go down here. So we could actually add transitions to each of the individual classes, but as the transition will be the same, it will just be a very basic 0.1 second transition for all of the elements. So for the checkbox and the to-do text, I think we can just basically do dot to-do text and dot checkbox, and we can now just do a transition of 0.1 seconds. Okay, let's save that and let's go back to the application, and there we go. Cool. So the checkbox is transitioning in nicely, and I think the text is transitioning pretty nicely as well. But to just confirm that it is transitioning properly, let's just go to the default to-do text, and let's just make this 0.2. Okay, let's save that and let's go back to the application, and here we can see that it is transitioning. Okay, let's just change this to 0.58, save that. Yeah, so it is actually... Yeah, so let's go down here. Let's see how this looks with 0.2 seconds. Yeah, so 0.1 seconds might be a bit nicer, or 0.12 seconds. Let's try that. Save that, go back to the application. Cool, alright. Now let's go back and let's change back the default to 0.9. Where is it? 0.9. Okay. Let's save that and let's go back to the application. And there we go. And actually, this is kind of light, so I think maybe we can actually change this to 0.8, and on hover, we can not make it white, but we can make this RGBA white 0.95. Let's save that, go back to the application. Okay, cool. So yeah, maybe let's make this 0.85 and try that. Alright, cool. Alright, cool. So I think that looks good. So let's go back to the code and make sure everything's okay. Yeah, okay. I think it's all good. All right. So what we can now do is we can now move on to work on the Notes UI. All right then, let's do that next.